Well, today we're going to have a look at configuring failover in the Cisco ASAs. We're going to be doing a stateful LAN-based failover, and the firewalls will be in active standby mode, right? So the active firewall is the only one running at any given time. It's the one passing all the traffic through it. And the standby unit is just that. It's standing by waiting to take over in the event the active firewall fails. Either the device itself fails totally, or one of the interfaces determined to be failed, and it'll fail the entire firewall over to the standby unit. Okay. I'll just mention that we need to have for the stateful failover, you need to have a dedicated interface on the firewall. So we have in our topology here, we have inside network 10.10.10/24, DMZ at 20.20.20/24. There's our outside subnet here. We have a failover segment. Our failover is a /30. 111.1 will be on the prime. .2 will be on the standby unit, and that has to be again a specific interface. So you can see I've got two cables coming from each firewall because the DMZ switch has a 2-interface VLAN on it just for failover, right? So you have to have a spare interface just to pass the state information back and forth between the two firewalls. Okay, and so again, I say pass the state information back and forth. We're doing stateful failover. So what that means is some of the state information that's going through the active firewall is passed to the standby unit, so that in the event the active firewall fails and the standby has to take over, if you do a stateless failover, then when there is a failover, all your users will be disconnected. You'll have to reconnect, right? But in the case you're passing state info, not everything gets dropped. So the stuff that is passed back and forth is the net translation table. That's passed back and forth. Your TCP connection states are passed back and forth. That's with the exception of HTTP states, right? Your port 80 states don't get passed back and forth unless you specifically add a command to do that. We're going to do that, and I'll point it out when we get there. So aside from HTTP, which you have to enable, the TCP connection states are actually going to be passed back and forth. Your UDP connection states are passed back and forth. Your ARP table is passed back and forth. Your ISACAMP and IPsec S8 table is passed back and forth. A few things that are not passed back and forth. The user authentication table will not be replicated to the standby firewall. Your route table does not get replicated. The state information for any SSM modules you have, right? So if you have security modules within the ASA, an IPS module, for example, the state of the module will not get passed to the failover unit. Okay, so I think we'll just we'll go for it now. So to start off, we'll just change the host name to FW, just for the sake of doing it. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and configure the IP addresses. So you need to do interface E1 IP address, and again our internal is 10.10.10. There will be 1 on the primary. Our subnet mask is /24, and then you have to put on the interface standby and then the standby IP, like so, right? So even your standby unit you could connect to by pointing to the standby IP. Conversely, the primary the active will have this .1, and when a failover happens, this IP ends up going on the standby, as well as the MAC address will go onto the standby. And what was the active and now the standby will take the failover, the standby IP here, right? So the MAC address of the active device as well as the IP for each interface gets taken over by the standby IP. And in that way, there's no loss for the ARP tables for all your devices. They still point to the same MAC and IP resolution, because those are transferred back and forth between the devices. And these firewalls right now are default. There's no config in here, so we're going to have to configure everything, including name-IF, excuse me, name-IF inside. Gives us 100 by default, which is good, security level. And we'll have to do a no shut when it catches up. No shut. We'll do int E2. We'll do IP address. This is going to be our DMZ, so we're 20.20.20.1 /24, and then standby 20.20.20.2. What did I put here? Oh, sorry, I put 1. I said 2 and put 1. Okay, 2. Good. And then we'll do name if DMZ. It's going to give 0 by default for security level. And because it's our DMZ, we'll just change that. Security level. Oh, what happened? Dash, right? Ah, so typo there. There you go. Security level 50. And we'll do no shot, right? We'll go to int E0, IP address 111.1/24, and then standby .2. Okay, no shot. Name if to get a security level 0. Okay, and then we're going to use Ethernet 3, as I mentioned before, for our dedicated failover interface. And all you have to do on the failover interface, no shut. You don't have to configure anything else. Everything else will be configured in your failover commands, which we're ready to get to now. So we're going to do failover typing problems today. LAN unit, and this is going to be our primary device. So failover LAN unit primary. We're going to do failover LAN interface. You got to give it a name. We'll call it failover, and the interface will be Ethernet 3. And it's saying here, non-failover interface config is cleared on E3 and its sub-interfaces. So when we have a look at E3 later, you'll see there's nothing configured in there. No speed, no duplex, no security levels, no anything. It's strictly for failover and passing the the state information and stuff back and forth. We'll do failover LAN enable. We'll do failover, as we talked about before, replication HTTP. So now that's going to pass our port 80 states to the standby unit. We got to configure the MAC addresses here, so you need to do a show int. I mean, you could get this ready ahead of time, but I didn't. So what we got to do is that's going to be too messy too. We'll do interface at a time. Show int E1, and over here we'll do get out of there. Show int E1. Okay. So what we need to do then is failover MAC address ETH1, and then we need to put the MAC address that's on the primary unit here, it's E1 interface, space, and then the MAC address that's on the failover or the standby unit's E1 interface. Okay, and we'll just get ready. We'll do a show int E2 and get that side ready, but we're going to come here and paste in the E1 MAC. And you have to do that for all the interfaces except the failover. So we got to do it for inside, DMZ, and outside. I'm going to save a little time and just backspace here. Oops, actually I'm going to need to do a show int E2 first. We'll go up. We'll make that a 2. Grab this MAC address. Copy paste space. Then we'll grab this MAC address. E2 on the standby. Just do a show int E0 to get ready for that. Then we'll come here and paste in the E2 MAC. We do a show int E0 over here, and we'll just get ready to paste that right in there, 0. And this is the last one for us because you only have 3 interfaces here. MAC address, space, and we'll grab the MAC from here. Where'd you go? MAC. Okay, so that's it for the interfaces. I think I'm just about at 10 minutes, so I'm just going to stop this and restart. Have a look for vid number 2 in the failover series, and I'll see you in 1 minute.